I'm Gabriela Flores, and I'm here with some of our executive team to talk about energy decision intelligence. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm David Wilson, the CEO of Energy Exemplar.
And I'm Prajval Parthasarathy, President and Chief Operating Officer.
Thinking about the current environment, what's different about the energy market right now, and why does it create urgency?
Decisions being contemplated at the moment are bigger than ever before. Not only are the capital allocations bigger, the pace and complexity of the decisions that are being contemplated outstrip anything that's happened previously. This happens across the supply side with changes in technology of renewables and batteries radically changing the price structure. But particularly what we've seen over the last few years is a change to the demand side with effectively a demand shock from the rise of AI already on top of a strong base from the electrification of industry. And then recently, the oil shock, another part of the supply shock, has changed the game again. So all of these things have made the energy markets much more complex and interconnected than ever before.
I think when it comes to the tools and the processes that our analysts are using, about 70 to 80% of the time is really spent not so much on the actual analytics, but really setting up the models, communicating with stakeholders and such. The actual analytics time tends to be 20 to 30%. And what that means is that there's a lot of lead times required to do the analysis, and the pace that David's talking about just is not supported by the tools, processes, and infrastructure that exist out there. So there's a huge gap between what the business wants and the existing modeling throughput that's available to our analytics teams.
So that leads us really nicely into energy decision intelligence. What is energy decision intelligence, and why does it matter?
Energy decision intelligence is the ability to bring AI over the entire decision process. And so that's how do we build a model? How do we create the scenarios? How do we analyze all of that? And why this matters is the ability now to optimize every decision in a business or organization's looking at, not just the top one or two or three. That's a radical change from where we've been in the past. So it enables us to do many more scenarios, many more decisions in a much shorter time frame than ever before.
David, it's perhaps useful to think about it more operationally, right? And let's say you had your best modeler, for the moment, we'll call him Jeff, right? And he is someone who has always, answered every question you have in a reliable, predictable fashion. And his answers you literally take to the bank in terms of investments and so on. And imagine if we are able to accelerate Jeff in your organization so that, you have potentially 100 of them with the same reliability and trustworthiness that he can operate in today. And that's really the impact of energy decision intelligence in an organization. We take the trust of models run by Energy Exemplar and exponentially make them more available to the business stakeholders for decision making.
Energy decision intelligence, you talked about, bringing modeling and rigor to the decision workflow. So what does better decision making look like in practice?
Yeah, I think one of the key elements is the ability to stress test every decision. And, the cornerstone of that is the ability to run a lot of scenarios and understand what happens across all of those. And that's really what energy decision intelligence enables you to do, run much more rigor across all of these decisions.
And Prajval, as you talk to organizations, what do you see there?
Yeah, I think the best articulation would have been, it came from one of my customers, and it was a real life example where, a week before the IRP, they actually would have preferred to run 40 more scenarios than they actually ended up doing. And I think that's the type of agility that we're talking about with energy decision intelligence in practice. And that would allow analysts to stress test in the manner that David described. for better results.
And maybe we can sort of riff off that a little bit to say that, what we're seeing is moving from these periodic or ad hoc or, one-time studies to a on-demand analytics environment where the models are fresh and ready to go. And then you can ask your questions, create your scenarios, get answers in very short time horizons. I'd say real time, but not quite. They're still big models. They still need to run, but radically shortening that time so that everything's set up, ready to go. You ask a question, you get an answer. It can be actioned upon and used in the real world.
So as we talk about scaling this decision making, how does that change the relationship between executives and the modeling teams that they're relying on?
I think it becomes a much more integrated and dynamic relationship where the information can be provided in nearly real time, means that you can have a much more constructive dialogue. The executive can pose the questions or the challenges they're looking at. The modeling team can run those scenarios and give insights very quickly, and it gives you the ability to iterate that. So the decisions become much more stress tested, and the executive team can understand, the landscape of possibilities that any decision could result in.
And the modeling team becomes a visible partner in the business because, they are able to operate at the speed of the business, really support the key business decisions. And today, this is billions of dollars worth of decisions. So it really elevates the modeling team to become a key competence in the organization that, executives can rely on.
So how does energy decision intelligence expand the value of modeling across an organization?
So organizations are typically faced with making a interrelated set of decisions that span across time horizons, from longer term planning decisions to sort of midterm budgeting or operational decisions, right down to the actual what assets do I turn on or off or do I trade. And having a platform or the capability such as energy decision intelligence lets them make those decisions consistently. And what I mean by that is your long-term decisions that you've optimized flow into all the downstream decisions. That's hard to do without this type of platform.
I think the consistency of decision making is an essential construct. You need a modeling framework that is applicable to all the functions in your organization, and this is where Energy Exemplar's modeling framework is a distinct leader in the space. And with that consistency, and you apply the acceleration that was mentioned in terms of AI, speeding up the entire workflow, we're talking about data changing and insights appearing in real time. And that's really the power of modeling. Now, when you are taking that information and publishing it to all the business stakeholders, now they're well informed to make the decisions in the operational side in a day ahead or real time, as well as longer term decisions on investments, budgeting, etc., all out of one consistent framework.
So then how does energy decision intelligence expand the value of modeling across an entire organization?
Yes, I think energy decision intelligence has a dramatic impact on really two things. It enables consistency of decisions across time horizons. So most businesses are thinking from sort of long-term decisions through the medium and the short term, and having the platform enables them to be consistent across all of those. And then the other dimension is that it really makes this accessible to anyone in the business. Once the model is run and it's created, the ability to interrogate it through AI means that anyone who should have access to that sort of decision-making in the business can. That's a really radical transformation from where we've been in the past. And all of this on top of the pace and scale that we were talking about earlier.
This is the most exciting time ever to be a modeler or an analyst, right? Before, I think you were put into a setup and a process that you had to follow, but now with the tooling and AI available, you have options to really innovate and speed up your processes and really get more efficient in the overall modeling process itself. So I think this opens up all kinds of possibilities in terms of how responsive modelers can be, and really elevates their value to the organization and therefore the business as well.
As we're shifting the dynamics of modeling in organizations, how do you see the role of the analyst changing, or does it change, Prajval?
Absolutely. I think the analyst, I think is a very positive change. The analyst is in the forefront of all this decision making, and I think embracing the tooling and the infrastructure that we provide. I think the analyst, it increases their value exponentially by being able to answer all these questions that they're being bombarded with, and I think makes the analyst central to this grid expansion that's needed out there.
And David, what's your perspective? Do you think that the analyst becomes, more of a strategic player in the conversation?
Well, I think the first thing is whenever we go and meet clients, they're always constrained. They're never getting to answer all the questions they'd love to. And so this is effectively a superpower for the analysts where they can do far more modeling, far more simulation, far more analytics than ever before. So it does change their role. It really elevates them to the center of decision making for the business. So I think it's a very exciting time for the analysts.
Yeah, and I think David, the parallels with the AI revolution are quite significant, right? Like previously the idea of spending millions of dollars to train an AI model perhaps was unthinkable. But I think when people understand the value of what AI is providing, I think they're happy to spend all the millions necessary. And we think the same is true in simulations as well. I think the idea that, if an analyst can get to run all these simulations that are needed, then the value of what that would provide to the business is again exponential. And due to all the manual processes, the analysts are just not able to get there. But with the especially with the energy decision intelligence, we think is that superpower that David talked about, which will help our analysts and our customer organizations actually be able to meet the demands of the grid.
All right. So then what is the risk of the status quo? What happens if organizations don't embrace this change?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think what we're seeing is just this incredible period of disruption, which we've touched on several times, from the supply side, just shock, if you will, and the demand side shock happening simultaneously. The industry is changing at an unprecedented pace. And so for organizations who don't act, they'll literally get left behind here. They'll have to make decisions, and the probability of making incorrect or suboptimal decisions just increases. And so they'll either not act and be left behind, or they'll act and make a bad decision and face the financial consequences of that. So, in a lot of ways, you're really left with no choice but to move forward here.
The optionality just doesn't exist, right? We've got billions of dollars being invested, and these are decisions on grid expansion and so on that are going to last generations. And the idea of not changing to do this well, I don't think is a realistic option for most customers. And I think our job in Energy Exemplar is to really educate the market to help them understand that, better analytics is available, and there is no need for status quo to remain, and embracing energy decision intelligence is the way forward to really meet the challenge.
So thank you, David and Prajval.